What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, and it is a welcome back for myself after not having any content out for the baseball season. Kind of took a little bit of a break from DFS, from the website and everything, and I am back though for the NFL season. It is my favorite DFS sport. I know it's probably a lot of your favorite sports as well. Just with the big contest, football is always super fun and exciting to watch, and it's just like, from now until February, we're going to be really focusing on the NFL season. So hope you guys are excited that week one is just around the corner, a few weeks away. We'll have content out for showdowns as well, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't. We'll have videos consistently throughout the NFL season. You can hit the like button if you're excited that football's back. I do post my official picks lineups on the website, so if you want to join, it's dfsprocess.net. I have plans for the weekly or season. It's pretty cheap, if just in case some of you guys don't like to make your own lineups, don't know where to go. Pretty good spot to get started with. And then if you are some guys that like to kind of get involved with player props and parlays and sports books, I'll probably have a package for that too. But without further ado, let's get right into week one. So anytime there's a new week, I'm always looking at over-unders. That's probably a good place to start in terms of just figuring out what are the games that have a potential to be shootouts, what are some of my stacks going to be. If you're looking at defenses, some of these lower total games might be able to find a cheap defense, like in the Steelers-Jets game or in the Cardinals-Saints game. So just some ideas that you kind of jump off. Just a quick run-through of the over-unders just to give yourself an idea of where your lineup might go if you are building it just straight off the bat. So first thing that sticks out is Bucs-Falcons. That's going to be a really fun game. That's in the Dome as well, in Atlanta. So expect that one to be a shootout. You have some other games in the mid-40s that look decent, but that game is definitely my favorite for the main slate. And then there's also, I think the Panthers-Jags game is also a nice sneaky one because a lot of the Panthers players are pretty cheap. And, on the Jacksonville side, exciting draft pick there, Travis Hunter. They got some young guys. They kind of made their wide receiver core is pretty different now. So could look to the Jags if you want to do a bring back. No more Evan Ingram for them. For the tight end positions, you could get like a cheap one there for with Strange taking over as a primary tight end. And then, so those are probably the two games that really jump off the page to me so far. Just looking at just having an idea where the pricing is for some of those teams, and then also just games that have potential to be shootouts. So let's get started with the quarterbacks. You have Jaden Daniels as your most expensive guy. He's $7,000. Normally, I like to pay down at quarterback a lot of the time, unless it's later in the season. We get some injuries, we get some guys sitting out, so we're able to get. There's a couple of cheap running backs that are going to be starters or wide receivers that are going to be, kind of commanding a lot of the targets. That's times where I will pay up at the quarterback position, but typically I'm looking like the 6K range, maybe a little bit below that in the 5K range too, especially in week one where it's kind of you can kind of expect a lot of the unknown to happen. Teams are still kind of shaking off some of the rust. Week one, wouldn't be surprised if there are some upsets and things that you expect to happen don't happen. But regardless, Jaden Daniels does have a good matchup, even though the Giants' defense and defensive line is going to be pretty scary. Bringing in Abdul Carter, you still got Thibodeau, and they got a lot of some good linebackers there with Burns as well. So I don't think I'm going to be going up there, especially if I'm just making one lineup. Burrow against the Browns, easy stack there with Chase and Higgins, but I don't want to pay $6,900 for him. Now we get into the game that I was talking about, Baker Mayfield. He's only 66, which is decent price. He has had some big fantasy games last season, and since he's been a member of the Bucs. They did activate Chris Godwin from the PUP list, so we don't know if he's going to be available for week one yet, but if he is, just another weapon for him to target. So I don't mind him, but probably go a little bit cheaper in my opinion. I'm not looking at Jared Goff in that matchup against Green Bay. It's on the road. Green Bay is still going to be a pretty tough division game. Don't think I want to go there. Some of these guys have Q tags, but expect them to play. The guy that sticks out to me in the 5K range is Bryce Young. So he had a really good end to the season. He's been looking good in camp this year as well. They gave him a true number one, what looks like to be a number one in the draft with McMillan out of Arizona, and Young was running the ball a little bit more at the end. He had 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 4 games. He finished without an interception in 3 straight games. Had 7 touchdown passes. Playing really, really well. So I definitely don't mind him at that price tag. Michael Penix right below him at 56. He's in the game with the highest total right now. He was decent when he took over. I mean, had put up some decent numbers. They weren't really expecting a ton, but I think he showed some talent. And now that he had a full offseason to kind of prepare as being the starter, wouldn't be shocked, especially against Tampa, if he has a really good game. So both are viable. I think Young might be my preferred option, but both I think make sense. You got Lawrence really cheap at 53 in a really good spot. Those are 2 of my favorite games on the main slate. And then if you want to take shots, I don't know if you need to go down here below 5K or right at 5K, but you have Cam Ward as a guy. But going into Denver, not something I'm really looking to target. So for myself, give me Bryce Young. And instead of going over to running back, we're going to go right over to wide receiver and just pair him with what should be his favorite weapon for the entire season. And you're probably going to get him at the cheapest price point in week 1 just because we haven't seen any production yet. And once he starts coming out and has some good games, which I do expect to happen, see him being probably like a mid 6K wide receiver, especially in good spots. So McMillan and Young, you get a 1-2 combo there against Jacksonville's defense. And they don't really take up much of your salary at all. So that's the spot that I want to take advantage of. Just give myself a cheap quarterback, wide receiver pairing that has a lot of upside. So now we can go back over to running back. So Bijan is the most expensive guy, 8K. He's going very early in, if you're into fantasy drafts or anything like that. He's going as most drafts the number 1 running back, which is not surprising with some of the concerns with McCaffrey's injury history, and then Gibbs is probably be the number 1 guy if Montgomery wasn't there as well, but we know Montgomery's going to take some touchdowns and touches away from Gibbs. Your top 4, I think all look really good. Genty, he has had a good preseason. He had some nice runs. You saw him track a guy in one of the preseason games, so he looks good. They're not giving you much of a discount. In week 1, he's at 7K. Kind of like Bucky Irving, maybe a little bit more. We saw Bucky really take the reins in kind of the second half of last season from Rachaad White, and just was kind of being the primary guy, getting 20-plus touches a game. You give a guy like him 20-plus touches against Atlanta's defense, I have a pretty good chance he might be able to break or like my eyes, that he's going to have a chance to break a long run, get into the end zone, possibly get into the end zone multiple times. And they do utilize him at receiver as a receiving weapon too out of the backfield, which is always helpful for your running backs. I love Derrick Henry, but Henry's not really going to get much balls thrown his way. So a guy like Irving can give you a little bit of both, which gives you just even more upside. Other guys there, I like Irving as my favorite just based on price point and matchup, but I don't mind going to Gibbs or McCaffrey. 6K range, Chase Brown was a workhorse for the Bengals last season, and that should continue this year, but I don't want to pay that price against Cleveland when I think there's some other good spots that we can target. We know Mixon is probably going to miss a couple weeks. He hurt his lower leg, I believe, his knee, or it looks like it's a foot, ankle, so said he's not a lock to be ready. Even if he is, wouldn't be shocked if they give him a reduced workload, so I'm not looking to get to him at 62, even though that is a decent price tag. Kyren is fine because he gets like almost all the touches for the Rams at the backfield, but I think we can go a little bit cheaper here. So right here, you got a lot of guys with some really good spots, good price tags, and some good matchups. So give me Chuba Hubbard. We got 3 Panthers, which I think they're all really nicely priced. If the Panthers put up some points, I think Chuba definitely has a great shot to get into the end zone. McMillan, with his size, has a good chance to catch a touchdown pass from Young. So we are doing a little bit of a stack here, but I definitely don't hate it given how cheap some of their players are, and I think that wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers have a decent season and kind of surprise some people. But if you're not looking at Chuba there, you can scroll down to maybe like a Pollard, who's just safe for touches, but I don't love that matchup against Denver's defense. ETN might be sharing some work with Bigsby more so this season. We saw that happen last year. Nick Chubb, if he's starting and Mixon's confirmed to be out, then that's a spot that you can go to. And then Charbonnet, he's probably going to take some work away from Walker, but with those guys both, especially with how good he's looked in the preseason, unless one of them misses games, I'm not looking to target either, especially on a 12-game slate where we have plenty of options. But I feel pretty good. I mean, maybe some of the Panthers might scare you a little bit, but the pricing is really good for them. And then being able to pay down a little bit with my stacks, I'm able to just get to Jamar Chase here at 8,100. So if kind of showed that he might be the number one receiver in all of football. Especially last season when he had just every game he was just dominant that he played. Albeit maybe one or two games that he wasn't, but 17 touchdown catches is crazy for a guy like Chase. 1,700 yards. I mean, he had games where he just broke the slate. So in games where he goes for 193 and 2, goes for 264 and 3. If you don't have Chase in those games, you're done. Even 177 and 2. So you're not going to compete with the top guys. So I don't know. I'm not saying that's going to happen in Week 1 against Cleveland, but wouldn't be surprised. It's against the Browns last season. He had a touchdown in each, 97 yards. The most recent game, only 55 yards the other game. But I'm going to take Jamar Chase at 81. I think he's the best receiving option on the board in Week 1, given the matchup. And then you kind of have a little bit of a gap between the other guys, but give me Chase over Nakua, especially with Stafford. Might not be 100% with his back, and then they also brought in Devontae Adams, who's going to take some looks away from Nakua this season. You got Collins is really safe, but we'll see. I mean, he's going to command a lot of attention from the Rams defense. I don't mind it. I mean, he's really such a great, talented player, and whenever he's not injured with his hamstring, that sometimes can be a concern from him, but hasn't had any issues, going into camp and in the preseason. We saw him catch a touchdown pass, and I think in one of the first preseason games, in one of the first drives from Stroud. So the connection from between those two is not going anywhere. Other options that you have are definitely Brian Thomas, Amon-Ra at 71, Mike Evans 66, really good price tag, especially if you're looking to overload this game. We don't know if Godwin's going to play yet or not. If Godwin is confirmed out, that makes Evans look a little bit better. I think Drake London, he had a really good connection with Penix end of last season. He had some monster games, commanding a ton of targets, especially now that we saw Mooney is dealing with some injuries. He probably will miss some time. I mean, but the way that the coach is talking about, he's confident he will return sometime this year, does not make me feel good that he's going to be available Week 1, which definitely makes Drake London look even more appealing. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in Drake London, get a piece from the Atlanta side in that game. I got Bucky Irving from the Bucs side. I think we can get to another Tampa guy. Just want to wait to see what Godwin's status is. I mean, if he is in, it doesn't make Evans or make Ibuka unplayable, but it just makes him a little bit more appealing if there's not three guys out there competing for targets, especially with they still have the tight end. Otten was going to get some work, and then last season McMillan had some really good long catches and touchdowns, so he's also in play if there is no Godwin. Other guys that you can look at for wide receiver that are just a little bit cheaper that maybe you don't want to pay over $6,000 for, that give you some upside. Ridley, he had really good connection in camp and throughout the preseason with Cam Ward. I think those two are going to be, especially Ridley at $5,000. It's a nice price tag if you want to go cheap there. We know that the 49ers, kind of a new look for them until Ayuk comes back, but Jennings, he's going to be Jennings and then Ricky Pearsall as two guys that are going to get a lot of the looks at receiver, and both are pretty cheap. Pearsall at 45, probably looking at like your number one. Him and Jennings are kind of up in the air. Both are kind of de facto ones, but 45 for him is very affordable. So he's probably one of my favorite cheap receivers to look to in the $4,000 range. And then, I don't know if you want to go down here. I don't know if you need to go down here if you're making a single lineup, but there's some guys that you can look to that are, if I'm going below $4,000, it's give me a starter that's on the field, lining up for 70+% of snaps, and gives you some speed, maybe some big play upside. But as of now, I don't think I'm looking to target anybody that cheap. I'll leave the last three positions blank, but just kind of touching on tight end here. So Brock Bowers, McBride, your two top ones. Both are always going to be fine every week. Give you a constant, pretty safe floor with targets. Evan Ingram, now he's catching passes from Bo Nix. In Denver, Sutton is your main weapon. They don't really have a number two besides that. So Evan Ingram could definitely take that leap this season. Njoku, Flacco likes throwing the tight ends. He gets a lot of targets. He's safe. Good spot against Cincy. We know Bengals. Nope, the problem with the Bengals isn't their offense. It's that they can't stop anybody from a defensive side. So I think Njoku looks like a guy that we can target this season in a lot of good spots. Pitt's always a risky guy, but gives you some upside. 43. Panic said he's going to try to get him the ball, so if you take what he said to heart, don't hate that play. Brenton Strange at 33. He's taken over for Evan Ingram as your main tight end. He gives you upside, I think, at 33. That's a really good price tag, especially in a game that I like. So he's probably my favorite guy in the 3K range. 4K range, favorite guy, I'll probably say is either Njoku or Ingram. But I definitely don't mind Pitts either at 43. I think he gives you he'll give you a little bit of risk, but I think he gives you some upside, especially with Mooney likely missing multiple weeks. He takes a step forward in terms of commanding more targets. So besides London, he's probably going to be the second guy getting targets from Penix. So Pitts, definitely don't mind it. And then at defense, always like to scroll down, look to see if there's a cheap defense we can target first. So in the 2K range, the ones that give you at least some sort of consideration, you would say, is always the Saints defense. We know Kyler Murray's talented. He does turn the ball over. So you could look to the Saints defense if Stafford somehow misses or he's not 100%. Texans defense, definitely fine. Seahawks, 49ers, we'll see what they look like this year, but their offense definitely has taken some hits. And last season wasn't that exciting for them, obviously with a lot of injuries, but I think you could look to the Seahawks at only $2,500. If you want to take a shot on the Raiders, I think Drake May's good, and he's going to give you some points. He doesn't really make a ton of mistakes. And then if you're looking to pay up a little bit more at defense, and if you look to the 3K range, the ones that stick out to me, I would say definitely the Steelers. We know that game has the lowest total on the board. Fields looked a little bit shaky in preseason, so don't know what to expect yet from the Jets. And we did pass over the Jets at 28, but they are also a fine option that you could look to. With the Steelers, and they're going up against Rodgers, who obviously was a New York Jet. Not the best run as a Jet for Rodgers, but we'll see what happens there. I don't see myself paying over like 35 for a defense in week one, especially. And when you get weeks where you get backup quarterbacks starting, that's when you can kind of pay up. And if there is an expensive defense, but week one, kind of like where I'm at. I basically got everybody that I wanted from the two games that really stuck out to me. There's still a couple of guys that we want to look to more so we can get clarity on the Bucs injuries at receiver with Godwin. But I do think Ibuka, we did talk about Pearsall, but Emeka Ibuka is also, he's going to be the guy once Mike Evans and, Godwin's still pretty young, but once Mike Evans maybe hangs it up in a couple years, Emeka Ibuka is going to be that number one guy for Tampa. He gives you a lot of upside. He's talented. And actually, we saw McMillan is going to miss a lot of time with his neck. So, never mind. That makes Ibuka look even better in week one, especially if Godwin misses. Then Evans and Ibuka are going to be your two dogs that are going to get a lot of Baker's looks. So, that's what I got for you guys for week one. Best of luck. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll have more content out as we get closer to week one, but this is just kind of an early look, and then just to get us ready for the slate, to kind of get our minds churning a little bit. But that's all I got, and I will catch you all next time.